The first snowflake that landed on Sophia Dalton's nose should have been a warning, but she had pressed on anyway, urging her mare through the mountain pass with the stubborn determination that had gotten her both praised and scolded throughout her 22 years of life. Now, 3 hours later, as the wind howled like a wounded animal and snow fell so thick she could barely see her own gloved hands, she realized that stubbornness might finally be the death of her. The Wyoming Territory in December of 1884 was unforgiving, and the mountains outside Cody showed no mercy to foolish travelers who thought they could outrun a storm. Her mare, a usually steady beast named Clementine, stumbled again, and Sophia felt the animal's exhaustion in every labored step. They had lost the trail an hour ago, and now she was simply hoping to find any kind of shelter before the cold claimed them both. Her fingers had gone numb inside her gloves, and her face stung where the wind whipped snow against exposed skin. The heavy wool coat she wore, which had seemed so warm when she left her aunt's house in Billings that morning, now felt as thin as muslin. Through the white curtain of snow, a dark shape emerged. At first, Sophia thought it was just another pine tree, bent under the weight of accumulating snow, but as Clementine carried her closer, she saw the straight lines that could only mean human construction. A cabin, small and sturdy, with smoke rising from a stone chimney. Relief flooded through her so powerfully that tears sprang to her eyes, freezing almost instantly on her lashes. She dismounted, her legs nearly buckling when they hit the ground, and led Clementine toward the cabin. Before she could knock, the door swung open, and a man stood silhouetted against the warm glow of firelight behind him. "Get inside," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. "I will see to your horse." Sophia wanted to protest, to insist she could care for her own animal, but her teeth were chattering too violently to form words. She stumbled into the cabin's warmth, and the man brushed past her, taking Clementine's reins from her frozen fingers. He was tall, she noticed, with broad shoulders beneath a worn flannel shirt and dark hair that needed cutting. The cabin was small but well kept, a single room with a bed in one corner, a table and 2 chairs, a wood stove that radiated blessed heat, and a fireplace where logs crackled and popped. Sophia moved toward the fire as if pulled by an invisible rope, holding her hands out to the flames. The returning sensation to her fingers was painful, 1,000 needle pricks that made her gasp. The door opened again, bringing a gust of frigid air and snow, and the man entered, shaking himself like a dog. He was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 30, with a weather-beaten face that spoke of years spent outdoors. His eyes, when they met hers, were an unexpected shade of gray-green, like sage after rain. "Your horse is in the lean-to with mine," he said, moving to close the door firmly against the storm. "She will be all right. I gave her some hay and rubbed her down." "Thank you," Sophia managed, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought we were going to die out there." "You nearly did," he said bluntly, moving to the stove. He picked up a kettle and poured steaming liquid into a tin cup. "Drink this. It is just coffee, but it will help warm you from the inside." She took the cup gratefully, wrapping both hands around it and sipping carefully. The coffee was strong and bitter, but it was hot, and she could feel it spreading warmth through her chest. "I am Sophia Dalton. I was traveling from Billings to meet the stage in Cody. I thought I could make it before the storm hit." "Quentin Barnes," he said, his tone suggesting he thought her judgment questionable. "The storm came in faster than anyone expected. You should not have been traveling alone." "I had no choice," Sophia said, bristling slightly despite her gratitude. "My father is ill in Cheyenne. When I received the telegram, I left immediately." Something in Quentin's expression softened slightly. You will not be going anywhere for a while. This storm is settling in. Could be days before the pass is clear enough to travel. Days. The word hung in the air between them. Sophia looked around the small cabin again, seeing it now not just as shelter but as a prison. A prison she would be sharing with a complete stranger. A male stranger. The impropriety of the situation struck her suddenly and forcefully. "I will sleep by the fire," she said quickly. "I do not want to impose on your hospitality more than necessary." "The fire will die down during the night," Quentin said, his tone practical rather than improper. "You will freeze. There are enough blankets for the bed." "I will make a pallet by the fire." "I cannot take your bed," Sophia protested. "You can and you will," Quentin said firmly. "I know these mountains and I know this cold. You do not. If you want to reach your father, you need to stay alive, and that means staying warm." His logic was unassailable, though it did nothing to ease Sophia's discomfort with the arrangement. She sipped her coffee and studied him covertly over the rim of the cup. He moved around the small space with the easy efficiency of a man long accustomed to caring for himself. There was a loneliness to him, she thought, something in the way he held himself apart, as if he had forgotten how to share space with another person. "How long have you lived here?" she asked, more to break the silence than from genuine curiosity. 5 years, Quentin said, stirring something in a pot on the stove. "After I left the cattle ranches, I trap in the winter, pan for gold in the summer, make enough to keep myself supplied. That sounds like a solitary life." "It is," he said, and offered nothing more. Sophia fell silent, watching the storm rage outside the single window. The wind screamed around the cabin's corners and snow piled up against the glass. She had never felt so isolated, so cut off from the world she knew. Yet there was something almost peaceful about it too, being forced to simply exist in this moment, with no demands or expectations beyond survival. "You should eat something," Quentin said, breaking into her thoughts. He ladled stew into a bowl and brought it to her. "It is just venison and vegetables, nothing fancy." The stew was hot and savory, and Sophia realized she had not eaten since breakfast, which felt like a lifetime ago. She ate gratefully while Quentin filled his own bowl and sat at the table, leaving her the chair closest to the fire. They ate in silence, and Sophia found herself studying him again. There was a sadness to his face in repose, she thought, lines around his mouth that suggested he smiled rarely. His hands were scarred and calloused, the hands of a man who worked hard for everything he had. "You said you trap," she said when she had finished eating. "What do you trap?" "Beaver, mostly, some fox and marten. The pelts fetch good prices in Cody, enough to see me through to spring." He paused, then added, "It is honest work." There was something defensive in the way he said it, and Sophia wondered what had driven him to this isolated existence. Had he been running from something, or running toward solitude? She knew better than to ask. She had her own secrets, her own reasons for being on that mountain pass alone. "I am sure it is good work," she said softly. "I did not mean to imply otherwise." Quentin nodded, his expression unreadable. He took her empty bowl and washed both dishes in a basin of water he had warming on the stove. Sophia watched him, fascinated by the domestic scene. He moved with the same efficiency here as he had outside, everything in its place, every action purposeful. As the evening wore on, the cabin grew warmer, almost cozy despite the storm raging outside. Sophia felt her eyelids growing heavy, the exhaustion of fear and cold catching up to her. She found herself watching Quentin as he checked the fire, added more wood to the stove, and prepared his pallet by the hearth. There was something comforting about his presence, she realized, something steady and reliable that made her feel safer than she had in months. "You should sleep," Quentin said, noticing her drooping eyes. The bed is ready. Sophia wanted to protest again, but she was too tired. She moved to the bed, which was covered in heavy quilts that looked handmade, their patterns simple but sturdy. She removed her boots and outer coat, keeping her dress on for modesty's sake, and slipped under the covers. The mattress was stuffed with something soft, probably corn husks or straw, and the blankets were warm. She could smell wood smoke and pine and something else, something masculine and not unpleasant. "Thank you," she said softly, looking across the room to where Quentin was settling onto his pallet. "For everything. You saved my life." "You would have done the same," Quentin said, though something in his tone suggested he was not entirely sure that was true. "I would have," Sophia said firmly, "despite what you might think of foolish women traveling alone in winter." A ghost of a smile crossed Quentin's face, the first she had seen. "I do not think you are foolish. Desperate, maybe. Brave, certainly, but not foolish." The unexpected compliment warmed Sophia more than the blankets. She watched as he settled into his makeshift bed, his back to her, and listened to the storm outside gradually fade as sleep claimed her. She woke once during the night, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. The fire had burned down to embers, casting dancing shadows on the log walls. Across the room, she could see Quentin's form, motionless on his pallet. She wondered what dreams troubled him, if any, and what had brought a man like him to choose such isolation. Then sleep pulled her back under, and she did not wake again until morning. Dawn came late and gray, the storm still raging with undiminished fury. Sophia woke to find Quentin already up, stoking the fire and preparing coffee. He moved quietly, trying not to wake her, and she lay still for a moment, watching him. In the dim morning light, his face looked gentler somehow, less guarded. His hair was tousled from sleep, and he had not yet put on his boots. There was an intimacy to seeing him this way, unprepared and unguarded, that made Sophia's breath catch slightly. "Good morning," she said, sitting up. Quentin turned, and that guarded expression slipped back into place. "Morning. Coffee will be ready soon. Storm has not let up." Sophia rose and moved to the window, peering out at a world transformed into nothing but white. Snow had drifted high against the cabin walls, and the wind still howled. The lean-to where the horses sheltered was barely visible through the blowing snow. "How long will it last?" she asked. "Hard to say. Could be another day, could be 3. Quentin poured coffee into 2 cups and brought one to her. "I have enough supplies for a week, maybe more if we are careful. We will not starve." "We." The word created an unexpected sense of partnership, of being in this together rather than simply shelter seeker and host. Sophia wrapped her hands around the warm cup and watched Quentin move about the cabin, checking supplies, adding wood to the stove. He was dressed in the same clothes as yesterday, worn denim pants and a flannel shirt, both clean but patched in places. A working man's clothes, practical and sturdy. "Tell me about Cheyenne," Quentin said suddenly, surprising her. "Your father, is he very ill?" Sophia felt her throat tighten. "I do not know. The telegram said he had taken a bad fall, that I should come quickly. My mother died 3 years ago, and he is alone now. I have been living with my aunt in Billings, helping with her children. No siblings, a brother, but he is in California, seeking his fortune in the mines." "We have not heard from him in over a year," Quentin nodded slowly. "Family is important. You are right to go to him, storm or no storm." Something in his tone made Sophia ask, "Do you have family, Quentin?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Not anymore. My parents died when I was young." "Fever. I was raised by an uncle who worked a cattle ranch near Sheridan. He died 5 years ago and I came here." "I am sorry," Sophia said softly. "That must have been very difficult. It was a long time ago." Quentin's tone made it clear the subject was closed. He moved to the stove and began preparing breakfast, some kind of porridge with dried berries mixed in. The domestic rhythm was oddly comforting, and Sophia found herself relaxing in spite of the strangeness of the situation. They ate breakfast in companionable silence, and then Quentin bundled up to check on the horses. He was gone for perhaps 20 minutes, coming back with snow clinging to his coat and ice in his beard. "Horses are fine," he reported, stamping his feet to remove the snow. "Fed and watered. Your mare is a good animal, sturdy." "She was my mother's," Sophia said. "One of the few things my father let me keep when I went to live with my aunt." Quentin nodded, understanding perhaps more than she had said. The rest of the morning passed slowly. Sophia helped wash dishes, and Quentin showed her where he kept his supplies, practical knowledge in case something happened to him. The thought sent an unexpected chill through her, the realization of how isolated they truly were, how dependent on each other for survival. "You read?" Quentin asked suddenly, gesturing to a small shelf where perhaps a dozen books sat. "Yes," Sophia said, moving to examine the collection. There were some classics, worn copies of Shakespeare and Dickens, a Bible, some dime novels, and a book on mining techniques. She pulled down a volume of poetry and settled into the chair by the fire. Quentin watched her for a moment, something unreadable in his expression, then went to his own shelf and retrieved a book on animal husbandry. They read in silence, the storm continuing its assault on the cabin walls. It was peaceful in a way Sophia had not expected, sharing space with this quiet man, no demands for conversation or entertainment, just two people existing together. At midday, Quentin made sandwiches from bread he had baked himself and some dried meat. They ate and returned to their reading. Sophia found herself sneaking glances at him over the top of her book, watching the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his lips moved slightly as he read. He was handsome, she realized, in a rough, unpolished way. Strong features, a firm jaw, those interesting eyes that seemed to change color depending on the light. As if sensing her gaze, Quentin looked up, and their eyes met. Something passed between them, a spark of awareness that made Sophia's cheeks flush. She looked back down at her book quickly, her heart beating faster. This was dangerous territory, she told herself. She was a respectable woman, alone with a strange man. She should be frightened, or at least properly cautious. Instead, she felt drawn to him, curious about the sadness she sensed beneath his stoic exterior. "You ever get lonely?" The question escaped before she could stop it, and she immediately regretted it. "I am sorry, that was too forward." "Yes," Quentin said simply, setting his book aside. "I get lonely. That is part of the choice I made coming here. Sometimes the loneliness is easier to bear than the alternative." "What alternative?" He was quiet for a long moment, and Sophia thought he would not answer. Then he said, "Being around people who remind you of what you have lost. Being in places where memories wait around every corner. Sometimes it is easier to be alone." Sophia understood that better than she cared to admit. "I felt that way after my mother died. Everything in our house reminded me of her. Every room had her presence. I could not even cook a meal without remembering how she taught me, without seeing her hands guiding mine." "Is that why you went to your aunt's?" "Partly. Also, my father changed after she died. He became distant, cold. It was as if he could not bear to look at me because I reminded him of her. So I went to Billings and I tried to build a new life." She paused, then added quietly, "But you cannot outrun grief. It follows you wherever you go." "No," Quentin agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "You cannot outrun it, but sometimes you can outlast it. Give it enough time and the sharp edges wear smooth. It never disappears, but it becomes bearable." They sat in silence after that, but it was a different kind of silence, deeper and more intimate. Sophia felt as if they had shared something important, some essential truth that created a bond between them. Outside, the storm continued, but inside the cabin, something had shifted, some wall had come down. That evening, Quentin made a stew with rabbit he had in his cold storage, and they ate by firelight, the lamp oil too precious to waste. The dancing flames cast shadows across Quentin's face, highlighting the planes and angles, making him look almost otherworldly. Sophia found herself mesmerized by him, by the way he moved, the way he spoke, the rare smiles that transformed his serious face. "Tell me about trapping," she said, wanting to hear his voice to keep him talking. "What is it like?" Quentin leaned back in his chair, considering. "It is cold work, hard work. You set your trap lines early in the morning, checking each trap, resetting them, collecting any catches. Then you have to skin the animals, prepare the pelts. It is not romantic or adventurous. It is simply work. But you like it." "I do," he admitted. "I like being outdoors, being away from towns and people. I like the simplicity of it. Set the trap, check the trap, prepare the pelt, sell the pelt. Everything makes sense. Everything has a purpose. Unlike life in town," Sophia guessed. "Unlike life in town," Quentin agreed. "Too many people pretending to be something they are not. Too much talking about nothing. Too many expectations and judgments." "You sound like you were hurt," Sophia said gently. "Someone in town hurt you." Quentin's expression shuddered immediately, and Sophia knew she had pushed too far. But after a moment he surprised her by answering. "There was a woman," he said quietly, staring into the fire. "Emily. We were engaged. I was working on my uncle's ranch, saving money for our own place. Then she met a banker from back east, visiting Sheridan on business. He had money, education, fine clothes. Everything I did not have. She broke our engagement and married him within a month." "I am so sorry," Sophia said, feeling genuine pain for him. "That must have been devastating." "It was," Quentin said simply. "Not just because I lost her, but because I realized she had never really seen me. She had seen a rancher, a provider, a means to an end, but she had never seen me, who I really was. When someone better came along, I was forgotten." "Then she was a fool," Sophia said fiercely. "Anyone who cannot see your worth, who you truly are, does not deserve you." Quentin looked at her, surprise clear on his face. "You barely know me. I know that you saved my life without hesitation. I know that you gave up your bed for a stranger. I know that you treat your horse with kindness and keep your home clean and read poetry in your spare time. I know that you are a good man, Quentin Barnes, whatever happened in your past." Something flickered in Quentin's eyes, something warm and almost vulnerable. "You are kind to say so." "I am truthful to say so," Sophia corrected. She held his gaze, feeling that spark of connection again, stronger this time. "Thank you for telling me. I know it could not have been easy." "It was not," Quentin admitted. "I have not spoken of it to anyone. There is no one to speak to out here." "Well, you can speak to me," Sophia said softly, "for as long as I am here." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. "For as long as I am here." A reminder that this was temporary, that soon the storm would pass and she would leave, continuing her journey to her father. The thought brought an unexpected pang of sadness, a reluctance to imagine herself anywhere but in this warm cabin with this lonely man. That night, as she lay in his bed surrounded by the scent of him, Sophia stared at the ceiling and wondered what was happening to her. She had known Quentin Barnes for barely a day, yet she felt more connected to him than she had to anyone in years. There was an honesty between them, a stripping away of pretense that came from being isolated together, from sharing space and stories and silence. She could hear him breathing across the room, steady and even, and the sound comforted her. Despite the impropriety of their situation, She felt safe here in a way she had not felt since her mother died. Safe and seen and understood. It was a dangerous feeling, she knew. She could not afford to develop attachment to a man she would soon leave behind, but her heart, it seemed, had other ideas. The second day of the storm dawned much like the first, gray and white and howling. But the atmosphere inside the cabin was different, warmer somehow, more comfortable. They moved around each other with growing ease, Sophia helping with breakfast while Quentin checked the fire, their movements synchronized like a dance they had been practicing for years. "Tell me about Billings," Quentin said as they ate. "What did you do there?" "I helped my aunt with her children, 4 boys ranging from 3 to 12. I also did sewing for some of the town ladies, making dresses and such. My mother taught me to sew, and I am quite good at it. You must have been valuable help to your aunt." "I suppose," Sophia said. "But I always felt like I was living someone else's life, you know, caring for someone else's children, sewing other women's pretty dresses. I felt like I was waiting for my real life to begin." "What does your real life look like?" Quentin asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Sophia considered the question carefully. "I do not know exactly. I suppose I always thought I would marry, have children of my own. But I also want something more. I want to matter, to make a difference somehow. I want to be more than just someone's wife or mother or niece. I want to be myself, fully and completely." "That is a radical thought for a woman," Quentin observed, not critically but thoughtfully. "Perhaps," Sophia agreed, "but it is how I feel nonetheless." "I think that is admirable," Quentin said quietly. "Knowing what you want, even if the world says you should not want it, that takes courage." "Or foolishness," Sophia said with a small smile. "Remember, I am the woman who tried to outrun a blizzard." Quentin laughed, a genuine, warm sound that transformed his face. Sophia felt her heart skip at the sight of it, at the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, the way his whole being seemed to lighten. She wanted to make him laugh again, to see that transformation, to know she could bring that joy to him. "Tell me about your uncle," she said impulsively. "What was he like?" Quentin's smile faded, but not into sadness, more into fond remembrance. "He was a hard man, but fair. He taught me everything about ranching, about surviving in this country. He never married, never had children of his own, so I suppose I was the closest thing to a son he had. When he died, he left me a small sum of money and his best horse. I used the money to build this cabin and buy supplies. The horse is the one in the lean-to now, the bay gelding. He must have loved you very much," Sophia said, "to give you the means to start your own life." "I think he understood me," Quentin said. "He knew I was not meant for ranch work forever, that I needed something different. The cabin, the trapping, it was his way of giving me that." "You honor his memory by living the life he made possible for you." Quentin nodded slowly. "I try to. Sometimes I wonder if he would be disappointed, seeing me out here alone. He used to tell me that a man needed a wife, children, a legacy. But I could not face that again, not after Emily. The risk seemed too great." Sophia wanted to tell him that not all women were like Emily, that some women could see past money and status to the man beneath. But she held her tongue. It was not her place, and besides, what could she offer? In a day or two she would be gone, just another temporary presence in his solitary life. The morning wore on, and they fell into the rhythm they had established the day before. Reading, talking, comfortable silences. Quentin went out to check the horses and came back with the report that the storm seemed to be easing slightly, the wind not quite as fierce. "If it keeps clearing, you might be able to leave tomorrow," he said, and something in his voice sounded reluctant. "That is good news," Sophia said, trying to match his tone and failing. "My father will be wondering what happened to me. Does he know you are coming?" "I sent a telegram from Billings, but I am not sure it reached him. The lines are not always reliable." She paused, then admitted, "Part of me is afraid of what I will find when I get there. What if he is very ill? What if he has already died and I am too late? Then you will grieve and you will honor his memory and you will live the life he would want for you," Quentin said simply. "That is all any of us can do." "You are very wise for a lonely trapper," Sophia said, trying to lighten the mood. "I have a lot of time to think," Quentin replied. "Not much else to do during the long winters." That evening, as if by unspoken agreement, they stayed up later than they had before. Quentin brought out a bottle of whiskey, pouring small measures into tin cups. They sat by the fire, the lamp casting a golden glow over the cabin, and talked about everything and nothing. Sophia told him about her childhood, about her mother's gentle ways and her father's sternness. Quentin told her about learning to ride, about his first cattle drive, about the mountains and valleys he had explored. "I think you would like it here in the summer," he said, his voice slightly rough from the whiskey. "Everything is green and alive. The meadows fill with wildflowers. You can hear the streams running with snowmelt. It is beautiful in a way that makes your heart ache." "You love these mountains," Sophia observed. "I do," Quentin admitted. "They are the first place I have felt truly at home. Does that sound strange?" "No," Sophia said softly. "It sounds like you found where you belong." "Where do you belong, Sophia?" The question caught her off guard. She stared into the fire, considering. "I do not know. I have not found it yet. Maybe I never will. Maybe some people are meant to wander, never quite fitting anywhere." "Or maybe you just have not found the right place yet," Quentin said. His eyes met hers, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. "Maybe it is waiting for you to discover it." The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Sophia knew she should look away, should retreat to the safety of casual conversation, but she could not. She was caught in his gaze, drawn to him like metal to a magnet. "Quentin," she whispered, not even sure what she was asking. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were rough and warm, and the touch sent shivers through her entire body. "I know you have to leave," he said quietly. "I know this is temporary. But I want you to know that these 2 days have meant something to me. You have meant something to me." "You have meant something to me too," Sophia admitted, her voice barely audible. "More than I expected, more than I thought possible in such a short time." Quentin's thumb traced the line of her jaw, a feather-light touch that made her tremble. "If circumstances were different," he began, then stopped. "But they are not. You have to get to your father. You have a life waiting for you in Cheyenne, and I am just a trapper in a cabin in the mountains." "You are more than that," Sophia said fiercely. "You are so much more than that, and I wish you could see it." Something broke in Quentin's expression, some final wall crumbling. He leaned forward, and Sophia met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that was gentle and searching and full of longing. She felt his hand cup the back of her head, her own hands finding their way to his shoulders, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, becoming more urgent, weeks and months and years of loneliness pouring into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quentin rested his forehead against hers. "This is dangerous," he murmured. "I know," Sophia agreed, but she did not pull away. They sat like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the fire crackling beside them. Then, with a sound that was almost pain, Quentin pulled back, putting distance between them. "You should sleep," he said, his voice strained. "Tomorrow will be a long day." Sophia wanted to protest, wanted to pull him back to her, but she knew he was right. This was already complicated enough. If they went any further, it would only make leaving harder. "Good night, Quentin," she said softly, rising and moving toward the bed. "Good night, Sophia." She lay awake for a long time, touching her fingers to her lips where his had been, listening to him move restlessly on his pallet. The storm outside had quieted to a whisper, but inside her heart, a different kind of storm was raging. She had come to this cabin a stranger, seeking only shelter from the cold. But she had found something more, something precious and unexpected and possibly impossible. She had found a connection that felt like coming home. The third morning dawned clear and brilliant, the sun reflecting off snow so white it hurt to look at. Sophia stood at the window, watching the transformed landscape, and felt her heart sink. The storm had passed. She could leave. She should leave. Her father needed her, and every day she delayed could be the difference between seeing him alive or arriving too late. But the thought of leaving this cabin, of leaving Quentin, filled her with an ache so profound it took her breath away. Quentin emerged from the lean-to, having already fed and saddled both horses. He looked up at the cabin, and even from a distance, Sophia could see the resignation on his face. He knew as well as she did that their time together was ending. She turned away from the window and began gathering her things, the few possessions she had brought with her. Her coat, still damp in places, her gloves, the small bag that held her spare clothes and the last letters her mother had written her. Everything that defined her life before she stumbled into Quentin Barnes's world. When Quentin came inside, stamping snow from his boots, they both stood awkwardly, unsure how to proceed. The easy intimacy of the past 2 days had been replaced by the terrible awareness that this was goodbye. "The horses are ready," Quentin said unnecessarily. "The pass should be clear enough to travel, though you will need to go slowly. I can escort you down to the main road if you would like." "You do not need to do that," Sophia said quickly. "You have done so much already." "I want to," Quentin said firmly. "I want to make sure you reach safety." Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice. She pulled on her coat, now dry from hanging near the fire, and her gloves. Quentin picked up her bag and led the way outside. The world was breathtakingly beautiful, a pristine wilderness of white and blue. But Sophia barely noticed it. She was too aware of Quentin beside her, of the silence between them that was heavy with all the words they could not say. They mounted their horses, and Quentin led the way down the mountain. The trail was difficult, the snow deep in places, but he navigated it with the confidence of long familiarity. They rode for over an hour, following the slope of the mountain down toward the valley where the main road ran. When they reached the road cleared by the stage line workers, Quentin pulled his horse to a stop. Sophia stopped beside him, and they sat for a moment, looking at each other. "This is where I leave you," Quentin said. "Follow this road east. It will take you into Cody. The stage office will get you to Cheyenne." "Thank you," Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything, for saving my life, for your kindness, for these 3 days." "Sophia," Quentin said, then stopped. He seemed to be struggling with something, fighting some internal battle. Finally, he said, "If your circumstances change, if you find yourself free and wanting, there is a cabin in the mountains outside Cody. You would be welcome there, always." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. "Quentin, I cannot ask you to wait. I do not know what I will find in Cheyenne. I do not know what my life will be." "I am not asking you to promise me anything," Quentin said. "I am only telling you that there is a place for you if you want it, if you choose it. The decision is yours to make." Sophia wanted to throw herself from her horse into his arms. She wanted to tell him she would come back, that she would choose him, that she had never felt for anyone what she felt for him. But how could she make promises when her father might be dying? How could she choose her own happiness when duty called? "I will remember," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I will remember everything." Quentin nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Go, your father needs you." Sophia urged Clementine forward down the road toward Cody. After a dozen yards, she turned to look back. Quentin sat motionless on his horse, watching her. She raised her hand in farewell, and he did the same. Then she turned away and kept riding, tears freezing on her cheeks, her heart breaking with every step that took her farther from him. The journey to Cody took another 3 hours, and Sophia had never felt so alone. She arrived in town as the winter sun was setting, painting the snow-covered buildings in shades of pink and gold. The stage office was easy to find, and the clerk informed her that the next stage to Cheyenne would leave in 2 days. 2 days. Sophia found a room at the hotel and spent the time in a fog, barely aware of her surroundings. She ate meals she could not taste. She slept in a bed that felt too soft after Quentin's simple mattress. She stared out the window at the mountains and wondered if he was thinking of her. The stage journey to Cheyenne was long and uncomfortable, 3 days of cramped quarters and poor food and bad roads. But finally, on a cold January afternoon, Sophia arrived in the territorial capital. She found her father's address, a small house on the outskirts of town, and knocked on the door with her heart in her throat. A middle-aged woman answered, her face kind but tired. "Can I help you?" "I am Sophia Dalton," she said. "I received a telegram about my father, Thomas Dalton. I was told he had fallen, that he was injured." The woman's face cleared with recognition and relief. "Oh, thank heavens you have come. I am Mrs. Murphy, your father's neighbor. Come in, come in. He has been asking for you." Sophia followed her into the small house, which smelled of medicine and sickness. Her father lay in a bed in the front room, his leg elevated and splinted. He looked older than she remembered, his face drawn with pain, but his eyes lit up when he saw her. "Sophia," he said, his voice weak. "You came." "Of course I came," she said, moving to his bedside and taking his hand. "What happened?" "Foolish accident," her father said. "Slipped on ice, fell off the porch, broke my leg badly. Doctor says it will heal, but it will take time. Mrs. Murphy here has been helping me, but I could not manage alone." "I am here now," Sophia said, squeezing his hand. "I will take care of you." Relief flooded her father's face. "I am so sorry, Sophia. Sorry for how I treated you after your mother died. Sorry for sending you away. I was so lost in my grief, I could not see what I was doing to you." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "It is all right, Papa, I understand." "No, it is not all right," her father insisted. "But I hope you can forgive me, and I hope you will stay, at least until I am back on my feet." "Of course I will stay," Sophia said, though even as she spoke the words, her heart was back in a cabin in the mountains. The weeks that followed fell into a routine. Sophia cared for her father, cooking and cleaning and helping him with exercises the doctor prescribed. Mrs. Murphy proved to be a blessing, checking in daily and helping with the heavier tasks. As her father's legs slowly healed, their relationship began to heal too. They talked about Sophia's mother, sharing memories that were painful but also precious. Her father apologized again and again for his coldness after his wife's death, and Sophia forgave him because she understood grief's power to change a person. But through it all, through every day and every task, Sophia thought about Quentin. She wondered what he was doing, if he was checking his trap lines in the snow, if he was reading by firelight in his lonely cabin. She wondered if he thought about her, if he regretted telling her she would be welcome if she returned. She wondered if she had imagined the connection between them, if 3 days had been too short to build anything real. Then, on a sunny February morning, her brother appeared at the door. Samuel Dalton had changed in the year since Sophia had seen him. He was tanned and lean, his clothes worn but his eyes bright with success. He had struck gold, he told them, not a huge claim but enough to set himself up comfortably. He had come home to share his good fortune with his family. "I can help with the expenses here," Samuel said, sitting at the kitchen table with his father and sister. "I can hire a nurse to help with Papa's care. You do not need to stay, Sophia, if you have somewhere else you want to be." The words hung in the air, and Sophia's heart began to race. Somewhere else she wanted to be. A cabin in the mountains. A lonely man who read poetry and trapped beaver and had kissed her like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. "Samuel, that is generous," their father said, "but Sophia has been so good to stay. I cannot ask her to uproot herself again." "You are not asking," Samuel said gently. "I am offering. Sophia, I can see it in your eyes. There is somewhere else you want to be. Someone else, perhaps." Sophia looked at her brother, then at her father. "There is a man," she admitted quietly. "A trapper in the mountains outside Cody. I met him when the storm caught me. He saved my life, and in the 3 days I was stranded at his cabin, I think I fell in love with him." Her father's eyebrows rose. 3 days. Sophia, that is hardly enough time to know someone. "I know," Sophia said. "It sounds mad, but I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about him. And he told me when we parted that I would be welcome if I chose to come back. I do not know if he meant it. I do not know if he still wants me, but I think I need to find out." Her father and brother exchanged looks. Then her father said, "Your mother, when I met her, I knew in a day that she was the one. Everyone said we were rushing, that we barely knew each other. But we had 43 years together, and every one of them was a gift. If you feel that way about this man, Sophia, you should go to him. Life is too short to let love slip away." "But Papa, your leg," Sophia protested weakly, even as hope surged in her chest. "Will heal whether you are here or not," her father said firmly. "Samuel can hire help, and Mrs. Murphy has been wonderful. You have given me 2 months of your time, and you have given me back my daughter. That is more than I deserve. Now go find your happiness." Sophia felt tears streaming down her face. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," her father said. "Go, before winter truly sets in and the mountains become impassable." It took Sophia 3 days to make arrangements. Samuel helped her purchase supplies, warm clothes, and a sturdy horse to replace Clementine, who had earned a retirement in her father's small stable. He also gave her money, enough to see her through several months if she needed it. "If this does not work out," Samuel said as they said goodbye, "you come right back here. You always have a home with us." "Thank you," Sophia said, hugging her brother tightly, "for everything." The journey back to Cody was easier than her first trip, the roads clear and the weather holding fair. But Sophia's heart raced with nervousness. What if Quentin had not meant his invitation? What if he had already forgotten her? What if she was making the biggest mistake of her life? She arrived in Cody on a clear March afternoon and immediately sought out the trading post where Quentin had said he sold his furs. The proprietor, a grizzled man named Henry, knew exactly who she meant when she described the quiet trapper from the mountains. "Quentin Barnes. Sure, I know him. Comes in every few weeks with pelts. Good quality stuff. He is a reliable man, keeps to himself mostly." "Can you tell me how to find his cabin?" Sophia asked, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. Henry studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I can. But those mountains can be dangerous if you do not know them. You wait here. I will draw you a map, and I will send word to a guide who can take you up there." "I do not need a guide," Sophia said. "Just the directions." "You are going to see Quentin Barnes alone." Henry's eyebrows rose. "You his wife or something?" "Not yet," Sophia said, lifting her chin. "But I hope to be." A slow smile crossed Henry's weathered face. "Well, I will be damned. Good for old Quentin. All right, miss. I will draw you that map, but you be careful. Spring thaw is starting and the trails can be treacherous." Armed with the map and enough supplies for a week, Sophia set out the next morning. The journey into the mountains was challenging, the trails muddy with melting snow, but she was determined. She had come too far to turn back now. It took her most of the day to find the cabin, following Henry's directions and her own vague memories of the route. When she finally saw it, tucked into its clearing with smoke rising from the chimney, her heart felt like it might burst from her chest. She dismounted and tied her horse next to the lean-to, where Quentin's bay gelding stood. Then, smoothing her skirts and taking a deep breath, she walked to the cabin door and knocked. The door opened, and Quentin stood there, his eyes widening in shock. He had grown a beard in the month since she had seen him, and his hair was longer, but his eyes were the same, that gray-green that reminded her of sage. "Sophia," he said, as if he could not quite believe she was real. "Hello, Quentin," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "You said I would be welcome if I came back. Did you mean it?" For a moment, he just stared at her. Then, without a word, he stepped forward and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder, breathing in the scent of wood smoke and pine and him. "I meant it," he said roughly, his voice muffled against her hair. "God, Sophia, I have thought of nothing but you for 3 months. I hoped, but I did not dare believe you would actually come back. I had to see to my father," she said, pulling back enough to see his face. "His leg was badly broken and he needed help, but my brother came home and he is taking care of things now. And my father, he told me to come find you. He said life is too short to let love slip away." "Love," Quentin said, his eyes searching hers. "Love," Sophia confirmed. "I love you, Quentin Barnes. I fell in love with you during those 3 days, and I have been in love with you every day since. I do not care that we barely know each other. I do not care that this is mad and impulsive. I know my heart, and it belongs to you." Quentin's face transformed, that rare smile breaking across his features like sunrise. "I love you too," he said. "I think I started falling the moment you stumbled into my cabin, half frozen and stubborn as hell. And I have been yours ever since." He kissed her then, a deep, claiming kiss that held 3 months of longing and loneliness. Sophia kissed him back with everything in her, pouring all her love and commitment into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Quentin rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "Life here is hard, it is isolated, you would be giving up so much." "I would be gaining everything that matters," Sophia said firmly. "You asked me once where I belong. I belong here with you. This is where my real life begins." Quentin pulled her inside the cabin, and it felt like coming home. Everything was as she remembered, the simple furniture, the books on the shelf, the warm fireplace. But it looked different too, brighter somehow, full of possibility. "Marry me," Quentin said suddenly. "I do not have a ring and I cannot offer you a fancy life, but I can offer you my heart, my home, and every day for the rest of my life. Marry me, Sophia." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married a week later in Cody, with Henry from the trading post and Mrs. Peterson from the hotel as witnesses. Sophia wore a simple blue dress, and Quentin wore his best shirt. And when the justice of the peace pronounced them husband and wife, they kissed with a joy that made the witnesses smile. They returned to the cabin as Quentin and Sophia Barnes, and that night, as they lay together in the bed that had once seemed too intimate, Sophia felt a contentment she had never known. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The months that followed were not easy, but they were good. Sophia learned the rhythms of mountain life, helping Quentin with his trap lines, learning to prepare pelts, discovering the wild beauty of the place he loved. She sewed clothes for them both, planted a garden when spring truly arrived, and turned the cabin into a home. Quentin bloomed under her presence, the sadness that had haunted him gradually lifting. He smiled more, laughed more, talked more. He taught her to fish in the mountain streams and to read the weather in the clouds. He showed her the meadows he had spoken of, now carpeted in wildflowers, and she understood why he loved this place so much. In the evenings, they read together by firelight, or Quentin played a harmonica he had not touched in years, the music sweet and melancholy. They talked about their pasts, their dreams, their plans for the future. Quentin wanted to build on to the cabin, to add a room for children when they came. Sophia wanted to learn to ride better, to explore more of the mountains with him. One day in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the peaks, Sophia told him she was carrying their child. Quentin's face lit with such joy that it took her breath away. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing, then set her down carefully as if she were made of glass. "I am not fragile," she protested, but she was laughing too. "You are carrying my child," Quentin said with wonder. "You are the most precious thing in the world." Their son was born the following spring, during a late snowstorm that reminded them both of how they had met. Sophia labored through the night with only Quentin to help her, his hands steady despite his fear. When the baby finally came, wailing lustily, Quentin cut the cord with trembling hands and placed their son in Sophia's arms. "He is perfect," Quentin said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are perfect." They named him Thomas, after Sophia's father, with the middle name Quinn after Quentin's uncle. The cabin rang with the sounds of a baby, and Sophia had never been happier. Watching Quentin with their son, seeing the gentleness and love in his every action, she knew she had made the right choice. Thomas Dalton, when he came to visit that summer, brought Sophia's brother Samuel with him. The two men approved of Quentin immediately, recognizing in him the quiet strength and devotion that Sophia had seen from the beginning. "You chose well, daughter," her father said, holding his grandson for the first time. "This is a good man, and this is a good life you have built." "I know, Papa," Sophia said, watching Quentin show Samuel his trap lines. "I am happy here in a way I never thought possible." The years passed in a rhythm of seasons. Quentin expanded the cabin as he had promised, adding a room for Thomas, and eventually a second room when their daughter was born 2 years later. They named her Alina, after Sophia's mother, and she had her grandmother's gentle nature and her father's thoughtful eyes. Quentin never returned to his complete isolation. He had found that sharing his life was better than living alone, that love was worth the risk of pain. Sophia never regretted her choice, not even on the hardest days when the mountain winters seemed endless or when money was tight. She had found her place, her purpose, her home. They prospered in small ways. Quentin's trapping business grew, and Sophia's sewing skills brought in additional income as word spread about the quality of her work. They saved enough to buy more land, to build a small barn for the horses and a few cattle. The cabin became a homestead, a real home. When Thomas was 8 and Alina 6, they welcomed a third child, another boy they named Samuel after Sophia's brother. The cabin rang with the sounds of children playing, of laughter and occasional squabbles, of a family growing and thriving. On quiet nights, after the children were asleep, Quentin and Sophia would sit on the porch they had built together, holding hands and watching the stars. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, but always they were together, two people who had found each other in a storm and chosen to weather all of life's storms together. "You ever regret it?" Quentin asked one night. "Giving up town life, the possibility of an easier existence?" "Never," Sophia said firmly. "This life with you, with our children, is everything I ever wanted and more. You gave me a home when I was lost in the storm. You gave me love when I needed it most. How could I regret that?" "I am the one who should be grateful," Quentin said, bringing her hand to his lips. You brought life to my lonely cabin. You gave me a family, a purpose, a reason to look forward to tomorrow. You saved me, Sophia, as surely as I saved you from that storm." "We saved each other," Sophia corrected softly. "And we keep choosing each other every day." As the children grew, they learned their father's skills, learning to track and hunt and survive in the mountains. They learned their mother's skills too, sewing and cooking and reading and writing. Thomas showed a particular aptitude for working with animals, while Alina had her mother's gift with a needle. And young Samuel loved nothing more than exploring the mountains with his father. Sophia's father passed away peacefully when Thomas was 12, and the family made the journey to Cheyenne for the funeral. It was bittersweet, saying goodbye to the man who had given her life and his blessing for the life she had chosen. But Sophia took comfort in knowing he had been proud of her, that he had seen her happiness before he died. Samuel, her brother, married and settled in Denver, making his fortune in mining equipment. He visited when he could, bringing his wife and eventually his own children to play with their cousins in the mountains. The Barnes cabin became a gathering place for family, a testament to the love that had started in a snowstorm. As the years passed, Quentin's beard grew gray, and Sophia's dark hair showed threads of silver. The lines around Quentin's eyes deepened, but they were laugh lines now, not marks of sadness. Sophia's hands, once smooth and soft, became work-worn but strong. They aged together, their love deepening with every passing season. When Thomas was 18, a young woman came through Cody, traveling alone to visit family. She got caught in a storm, and Thomas, who had been in town for supplies, guided her to safety. Sophia and Quentin watched their son fall in love the way they had, quickly and surely, and they gave their blessing when Thomas married the girl a year later. Alina, at 16, showed no interest in the young men who came calling. She had her mother's independent spirit and her father's love of solitude. "I will know when I find the right person," she told her parents. "The way you two knew, I will not settle for less than that." Young Samuel, at 14, talked about exploring, about seeing the country beyond the mountains. Quentin understood that wanderlust, having felt it himself when he was young. "When you are ready," he told his son, "go and see the world, but know that you will always have a home here to come back to." The cabin, which had started as a simple refuge, had become a legacy. Thomas built his own cabin on the expanded property, raising his family within sight of his parents. Alina eventually fell in love with a teacher who came to establish a school in Cody, a quiet man who appreciated her strength and skill. Young Samuel did leave to explore, but he came back every few years with stories of his adventures and gratitude for the home that waited for him. Quentin and Sophia grew old together in the cabin where they had fallen in love. Their children grown, their grandchildren visiting regularly, they returned to the quiet rhythms of their early days together. They still read by firelight, still sat on the porch watching sunsets, still held hands as if they were newly married. On a spring morning much like the one when they had met, when Sophia was 65 and Quentin 67, they sat on their porch drinking coffee and watching their oldest grandchild teach the younger ones to fish in the stream. "It is a good life we built," Sophia said contentedly. "The best life," Quentin agreed, "all from a winter storm that brought you to my door." "Fate has a strange way of working," Sophia mused. "If I had not tried to outrun that storm, if you had not been home that day, if we had not been brave enough to follow our hearts." "But we did," Quentin said, squeezing her hand. "And I am grateful for every day since." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their grandchildren play, listening to the mountain sounds they both loved. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of wildflowers and mountain air. Somewhere a bird sang, clear and sweet. "I love you," Sophia said, as she had said countless times over their decades together. "I love you too," Quentin replied, as he always did, and would continue to do for all the years they had left. The sun rose higher over the mountains, bathing the homestead in golden light. In the cabin that had sheltered a lonely cowboy and a woman lost in a storm, two rocking chairs sat by the fireplace, side by side, waiting for evening when their occupants would return to read together, to talk together, to simply be together. The wild Wyoming wind continued to blow, but it no longer sang of loneliness. Now it carried the sounds of family, of love, of a life well lived. The storm that had brought them together had long since passed, but the warmth they had found in each other's arms had lasted a lifetime. And in the end, that was all that mattered. They had found each other, chosen each other, and built a life together that honored the love that had bloomed so unexpectedly in a mountain cabin during a winter storm. Years continued to pass, and Quentin and Sophia remained fixtures on the mountain, beloved by their family and respected by all who knew them. When Sophia was 70 and Quentin 72, they celebrated their golden anniversary with all their children and grandchildren gathered around them. The celebration lasted 3 days, with music and dancing and stories told around the fire about how a winter storm had brought together two people who were meant to be. "Tell us again how you met," the youngest grandchildren begged, and Sophia smiled, taking Quentin's hand. "It was a terrible storm," she began, her voice still strong despite her age. "I was lost and frozen, sure I was going to die. And then I saw a cabin with smoke rising from the chimney, and I knew I was saved. I opened the door, and there she stood," Quentin continued, his voice rougher now but full of warmth. "Half frozen but with fire in her eyes. I knew in that moment my life was about to change." "Did you fall in love right away?" one granddaughter asked. Sophia and Quentin exchanged a look full of memories and love. "Not right away," Sophia said, "but close to it. Sometimes you just know when you have found the person you are meant to share your life with. Your heart recognizes them, even if your mind does not understand it yet." "That is how it was for us," Quentin said. 3 days together, and I knew I wanted her to stay forever. When she left, I thought I would never see her again, but she came back. "Because I loved him," Sophia said simply. "And because sometimes you have to be brave enough to choose the life you want, even if it is not the life everyone expects you to live." The grandchildren listened with rapt attention, soaking in the love story that had created their family. They would tell these stories to their own children someday, keeping alive the memory of a winter storm and the love it had made possible. As Quentin and Sophia moved into their late 70s, their health began to fail as it inevitably does. But they faced aging with the same partnership they had brought to everything else. When Quentin's joints grew stiff with arthritis, Sophia was there to help him. When Sophia's eyes grew weak, Quentin read to her every evening as he had done for over 50 years. They never spent a night apart. Even when Thomas and Alina urged them to consider moving to town where help was closer, they refused. The cabin was their home, the place where their love had bloomed, and they would stay there as long as they were able. On a late autumn day, when the aspens had turned gold and the air carried the crisp promise of winter, Quentin and Sophia sat together on their porch, wrapped in blankets against the chill. They were both 80 now, having celebrated Sophia's birthday just the week before with their entire extended family. "You remember the first night I stayed here?" Sophia asked, her hand in Quentin's as always. "How awkward it was, how you insisted I take the bed and you slept by the fire." "I remember," Quentin said with a smile. "I also remember thinking I had never seen anyone more beautiful, even half frozen and exhausted." Flatterer, Sophia said, but she was smiling too. I remember thinking how sad you looked, how lonely. I wanted to make you smile. You did, Quentin said. You have been making me smile for over 50 years now. Best 50 years of my life. Mine too, Sophia agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains they both loved. The same mountains where Sophia had once been lost, where Quentin had once been alone, where together they had built a life. I am tired, Sophia said after a while, her voice soft. Then we should go in, Quentin said, starting to rise. No, Sophia said, squeezing his hand. I mean, I am tired, Quentin, so very tired. Quentin looked at her, and understanding dawned in his eyes. Not yet, he said, his voice breaking slightly. We still have time. We have had all the time we needed, Sophia said gently. We have had a lifetime, my love. A beautiful, full, wonderful lifetime. We have loved each other, raised a family, built a legacy. What more could we ask for? More time, Quentin said stubbornly, but tears were running down his weathered cheeks. I always want more time with you, and I with you, Sophia said. But we both know winter is coming. We both know what that means. They held each other as the sun finished setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold and purple. The mountains stood eternal around them, witnesses to a love that had endured through all seasons. That night, they lay together in the bed they had shared for over 50 years, wrapped in each other's arms. They talked quietly about their life, about their children and grandchildren, about all the blessings they had been given. They laughed about the early days when everything was new and uncertain. They cried a little, mourning the approaching end even as they celebrated all they had shared. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the world in soft light, Sophia took her last breath in Quentin's arms, her head resting on his shoulder as it had on so many mornings before. She passed peacefully, with love surrounding her, in the cabin where she had found her home. Quentin held her for a long time, tears streaming down his face, but he was not entirely bereft. They had had over 50 years together, far more than many people got. They had loved deeply and lived fully. And he knew, with the certainty that had always marked his love for her, that she would wait for him, wherever end she had gone. He lived for another 6 months, cared for by his children who took turns staying with him at the cabin he refused to leave. He spoke of Sophia every day, telling stories about her courage, her kindness, her love. He read her favorite poems aloud as if she were still sitting beside him. He tended her grave, which was on a hill overlooking the meadow where wildflowers would bloom in spring. On a day in early spring, when the snow was melting and the first brave flowers were pushing through the earth, Quentin went to bed in the cabin he and Sophia had shared. He looked around the room one last time, seeing her in everything. Her sewing basket still sat in the corner. Her favorite shawl hung on its peg. The books they had read together lined the shelves. I am coming, my love, he whispered to the empty room. Wait for me just a little longer. Thomas found him the next morning, peaceful in death, his face finally relaxed and young-looking again. In his hand, he held a worn scrap of fabric that Thomas recognized as being from the dress Sophia had worn the day she first came back to the cabin, the day she had chosen to stay. They buried Quentin beside Sophia on the hill, the two graves side by side as they had always been side by side in life. The entire extended family came for the service, children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. They told stories and sang songs and celebrated 2 lives well lived and a love that had lasted a lifetime. Thomas decided to keep the original cabin exactly as it had been, turning it into a family shrine to his parents' love. The newer additions served as homes for those who stayed on the property, but the original room, the one where a lost woman had stumbled in from a storm, and a lonely man had found his heart, remained unchanged. Over the years, the story of Quentin and Sophia Barnes became part of family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The cabin stood as a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, partnership over independence, togetherness over loneliness. On the hill where they were buried, wildflowers bloomed every spring, yellow and purple and white, carpeting the ground around their graves. And if you stood there on a quiet day, listening to the wind whisper through the pines, you could almost hear echoes of laughter, of two people who had found each other in a storm and created a love that even death could not diminish. The mountains stood eternal as they always had, keeping watch over the cabin and the graves and the family that continued to thrive. The wild Wyoming wind sang through the passes, carrying stories of a winter storm that had changed two lives forever. And in the small cabin tucked into the mountainside, two rocking chairs still sat by the fireplace, silent now, but forever marking the place where love had warmed two lonely hearts and created a legacy that would endure for generations to come. The legacy of that winter storm, of that chance meeting, of that brave choice to follow the heart, lived on in every member of the Barnes family. They carried with them the knowledge that sometimes the worst storms bring the greatest gifts, that home is not a place but a person, and that true love, when you are brave enough to choose it, lasts not just a lifetime but forever.